Most couples think all they need is a will and some life insurance to protect their surviving spouse. The truth is that's exactly when the attacks begin. The IRS, the predators, and even what you might think is well-intentioned family all start to percolate at this point in time. Today, we're going to talk about exposing some of the realities of the surviving spouse. There are a lot, and we're going to talk about how far planning can go in helping you. As certified financial planners, we've helped hundreds and hundreds of widows and widowers at this very difficult time in life. We've seen the difference between those who planned and those who are successful and those who faltered. You need to put a system in place. And again, it's planning, getting the planning done ahead of time so that when that occurs, because it usually occurs to every couple.
It all starts with being educated to what the perils are when one of the two of you are going to die. It's inevitable. And most people are widows for multiple years, so the penalties are compounded year after year, sometimes for a decade, sometimes for several decades.
And we could talk about our mother, who is a surviving spouse and a non-financial surviving spouse at that, and talk about some of the issues, and we'll talk about them as we go through theirs. Here's what nobody talks about. Widowhood, whether you're a widow or a widower, is a perfect storm. We've got a grieving person who lost their spouse of could be 10 or 20 or 50 or 60 years. And it's a difficult time. The IRS, boy, they're right there with their hand out. That's something that people
they give you to the end of the year and then they pounce.
Right. And if the spouse dies near the end of the year, it makes it particularly difficult.
Yeah.
I often joke with clients that if you're on your deathbed or your spouse is on their deathbed and it's New Year's Eve, you tell the doctor to keep you alive until the ball drops. So you get another year of taxpayer. And what we're talking about is a married couple has higher tax brackets in a given year if one of the spouses dies in that next year, the year following death. You're a single taxpayer. So you do have the entire year to plan. And I think it's something that everybody should be thinking about. Quick story. I was with a client a few years back, and it was the attorney's final year of preparing taxes. And he was asking this client of mine we were all in the room together.
Final of 40.
He was asking, why are you doing all this Roth conversion? The client had millions of dollars in IRAs. And I said, well, what if Joe dies? His wife is going to have to take all this money out. Her income's going to be the same. They're going to lose her Social Security. They're going to have all the same dividends, all the same required distributions, and all the income tax brackets are cut in half. And I heard one of the strangest responses I've ever heard. And the accountant said, I never thought of that. So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
so,
to be fair, accountants are trained to prepare taxes in the moment, not a lifetime. They should be, but they typically plan for the year, not for the one's lifetime.
And some accountants do plan, but I find it's the minority, and you would probably agree with that.
This video is for educational purposes only. Always consult qualified professionals before making any legal, tax, or investment decisions.
According to McKinsey & Company, 70% of surviving spouses change their advisors within a couple years of the spouse's death. I find that amazing.
If I were to guess, I wouldn't have come close to that.
I wouldn't have either. I would have probably said 5 or 10. And again, we see it too. For the viewing audience, often there's a financial spouse and a non-financial spouse. In my house, I'm the financial spouse. My wife is the non-financial spouse. Our dad was the financial spouse. Our mom was not the financial spouse. When the financial spouse dies, having a game plan for the non-financial spouse is immensely important. So let's talk about some of the things that matter. We call it the someday single tax. Some people call it the widow's tax. But all of the tax brackets and all of the Medicare surcharge, what we call IRMAA, IRMAA brackets, are also cut in.
And the standard deduction.
So when you think about it, when you have a wealthy family and a spouse dies, in many cases, the income isn't that drastically different the year following death as it is the year when both of them are alive. We think you should be thinking about planning. We're going to talk about that.
Mom's the perfect example. Dad died in 2019. Her tax bill all but doubled with virtually the same income in 2020.
Then you take things like fraudsters. The FTC says that widows are targeted triple what the average part of the population is. And part of that is the grief, the emotional aspect.
They're vulnerable.
And I was going to say the other part is that they're vulnerable.
Yeah,
So Here's the protection truth. Families that implement this 5-layer protection system, usually have better results than those that don't. So let's talk about some of the things you do. We touched on it briefly, the someday single tax, the tax penalty, the widow's tax, we can call it what we want. But again, what can you do now? What can you do now to start preparing for that eventuality of the someday single? We can convert IRAs to Roths. There may be other, we can harvest losses in down markets. But the bottom line is the year after death, the tax bill's probably going up a lot. So we should start planning for that, as are the Medicare surcharge taxes in a lot of cases. I have a lot more widow and widowers that hit it or hit the upper brackets than I do the married couples. So start thinking about a tax plan over the next 5 or 10 years. We don't know when we're going to die, but something to think about.
It's almost inevitable that when you're sitting down with a couple, one of them is going to be a single taxpayer at some point in time, and likely for the better part of a decade. So it's just a matter of time that this is going to happen. If you plan ahead, the outcome is far better.
We're all going to die, and if you're married, the question is, does your spouse die anytime near you?
Statistically, they don't.
Right.
Individual situations can be different, sure.
So how about predators? And again, this isn't completely from outside agencies. This could be your own kids. Not everybody has good kids. So we think, be aware of who the potential predators are, and then start to build your team around that, your CPA, your attorney, your advisor, and maybe it's some of your kids.
It's often your power of attorney, at one point in time trusted.
Elder fraud is massive, and the numbers are staggering. We don't have any off the top of our head, but it's in the billions of dollars, and a high percentage of the time it comes from family members. How about identity theft? Again, if it in our case, or with our mother, not completely technologically savvy, and I think would be very apt. In fact, she did have a call from some huckster when I was over at her house one time.
She called one time to the office and said, I need help. This guy's in my computer. And then we have to pay him to get out. He charges ransom to get out of the computer.
So you start to think about this. Death certificates are public records, and it's very easy to find spouses as on things like Facebook. It's not hard in today's technological society to find who those people are. And then next one is emotional decisions. When my father-in-law died, and my mother-in-law said, you know what? Time to sell the house and move on. House is too big. And I said to my wife, maybe we want to pump the brakes. Maybe let's take a little time. He died relatively suddenly. He wasn't well, but they didn't know he was going to pass. And, we talked about it. At least we addressed the issue. And she said, you know what? My mom's ready to go. She doesn't want the big house. So at least we thought about it, but she had a good support system of people that could help you think some of these things through. So again, the decision tree. Start thinking about what can happen now and say, okay, what do I want to do? And if you reinforce those things periodically through meetings with somebody like your advisor, it's really, really great. So, month 1 of widowship, you just got to survive. Months 2 to 6, I think you sit back, you try to stabilize the situation and start to think. And then after that point, I think it makes a little bit more sense.
All of these things, and what have we not talked about? Investments. Investing is the easy part. Getting through all of these different minefields of decision points are far more difficult. Mm-hmm. The investments will be easy once we have the structure in place as to what the client really needs and wants to do. Mm-hmm.
And ask for help. If you've got kids, have a decision partner. Have somebody there to help you make decisions. And I think the final thing, and this one's hard because it's a friend and family filter. Sometimes you just have to keep people at bay and keep them out of the situation so they're not interfering with everything. Maybe that's a pre-written letter. Maybe it's part of the estate plan. Maybe it's legal documentation. Maybe it's a family meeting. So you start to think about this and say to yourself, maybe I ought to start planning and documenting and writing down. I had this client years ago, wonderful guy, did very well, and he was stricken ill. And we didn't know how long he was going to have. He actually passed a little quicker than we thought. And he said to me about his wife, when I die, I think you're going to have to make a lot of changes because I don't think she's going to be able to handle the money. And I said, strangely, I think she'd be quite good at it. And in fact, she was. But at least he was thinking about the situation to get the ducks in a row so everything was planned for. And she's been terrific, terrific non-financial spouse that became a financial spouse in a really short period of time. But it wasn't without planning, and it wasn't without discussion. It's kind of a hard discussion to have in the room with your wife and your advisor.
Yeah, it's imperative you do that, though.
And again, like just about everything else, planning is thinking about what might be the inevitable. In this case, is going to happen to everybody. And to start thinking about some of these things now. So what do you do next? Document. Let's get a wealth protection or a protection team together. Who are you going to surround yourself to help you make the decisions? If you've got 9 kids, pick 2. Pick one that's going to be that person. Calculate. Start calculating what are the tax implications if one of us is gone. Prepare. Think about the first 90 days. Write it down. Write it down when you're not emotional, so that when you are emotional, you've got a game plan for yourself. And then communicate.
It's really hard to make good decisions in that first window, that first 30, 60, 90 days right after you've lost your loved one.
Let's think about this as an example. If I go to plan my funeral and I say, well, my blue suit and my red tie and my white shirt and my gold watch and my black shoes, that's really kind of easy. Versus my kids are saying, what do we want to dress Dad in? Do we want to put him in his gym clothes or his golf shirt, with his putter by his side? If it's all planned, it's unemotional. And it's just thinking ahead. Protecting your spouse isn't about life insurance and a will. It's about putting a wall around everything so that when the time comes, we're insulated from that. And the greatest gift you give your surviving spouse may not necessarily be money or a good lifestyle, but it's a plan to think about how do we protect our wealth from the IRS, from predators, from family, so that they can live the life they want to live, in a place they want to live, with an income they want to live, and probably want to pass the money on to others.
Being able to give your wife the confidence of knowing that she's going to be okay financially, so she can grieve and she can take care of the family and do things in that first window, but not having to worry about, knowing that it's been well thought out and there's a plan that she's confident in, is a phenomenal gift to leave behind. Investing is the easy part. Ensuring your spouse never struggles alone is what really matters. You've seen the vulture circle. Our next video shows the exact preparation system that gives your spouse confidence instead of confusion when they need it most. Click to watch now.
Married with over $1 million of assets? Get your spouse protection plan. Book a call below.